Okay, in this video, we are going to continue with 1.5 and we're going to focus on using our graphing calculator to do a couple of the problems that we've already done. So if you don't have your graphing calculator handy, pause this video and go grab it. If you don't have it available right now, it might be better to just watch this video later when you can work along with me. So the first thing we're going to do is see how we can use the graphing calculator to solve an equation that has x on both sides of the equation. This is called the intercept method. So you might recognize the problem that we're going to do right down here. This is a problem that we worked out by hand a little earlier in the last video. So we are going to solve it, which means we want to know what is the value of x that makes this true. And the way you can do this on your calculator is you can graph two lines. You're going to graph the first line that is y equal to what's on the left hand of the side of the equation. And then you are also going to graph y equals what's on the right hand side. And when you graph these two things, it's going to give you two lines. And since we are looking for when these two sides of the equation are equal, we are going to look for the point where these two lines cross, and that is going to give us the answer to the question. So let me pull up the graphing calculator and turn it on. I actually already entered these in. You can see that I have two lines put in here. To get to the screen, you click y equals. We are graphing two lines, 2 times the quantity x minus 4, and then 3 minus 5 times the quantity 2x plus 1. That's just the left-hand side and the right-hand side of this equation. And you can pause the video if you need to type those in. And then click Graph. And you should see something like this. If yours doesn't look like this and you're sure that you entered them correctly, it may be that you need to change your window. So if you can't see those two lines and see where they intersect, now you might have the window set differently, but you can see that point where they intersect right down here. So as long as you can see that point, you're good. You don't have to have it looking just like mine. You're going to get the same answer as long as you can see where they cross. Okay, so we have done step one. We've graphed two lines. Now we are going to do a little calculation to find the point where they intersect. You could zoom in. You could keep making your window closer to that point and maybe be able to visually feel pretty comfortable that you found that point of intersection. But the calculator actually has a function that will find intersection. So it is in the calc menu. If you look up here on the top row, the fourth button, and it is the function, the second function right above trace is calc. So to activate that menu, we're going to do second calc or second trace. That's going to pull up this calculation menu. There's all kinds of things here. We're going to use some of these others later in the class. The one that we want to use is right down here at number 5. I arrowed down to that. You could also just type the number 5. I arrowed down and now I'm going to hit enter. And this brings up a little thing here. It doesn't just automatically calculate that point. You actually have to tell it what two lines you want to look at. We only have 2 graphed, so it might seem kind of silly. But if we had graphed like 6 different lines and we were looking for where 2 certain ones intersect, this is where we tell it which 2 lines we're talking about. So do you see the cursor blinking there? On my screen, it's kind of hard to tell which line that's on. So I'm going to arrow it over just a little bit. Do you see how it's moving down? And now I can tell for sure it is on this line that goes up and down right here. So once you can tell which line it is on, this is step number 3, check to see which line the cursor is on, and then press enter. So you have said, I'm looking for the intersection of this line, and now you're going to select the other. Now notice that on my screen, that cursor automatically moved to the other line. Make sure that it did on yours. If it didn't, you can use your arrow keys to get it to move over to that other line. Once you're sure that it's on the second line that you're looking at, hit enter. Now these calculators are set up for educational purposes, so it is going to ask you to guess what the answer is, and you can just skip right past that, and that's why we press enter twice. If you look at the directions here on step number 4, it says move the cursor to the other line and then press enter. Enter. You're pressing enter twice. The first time it's going to ask you to guess, press enter the second time, and it's actually going to find that point. And on my screen, it's kind of hard to tell, but it's actually blinking right there where those two lines meet. So that means they meet at the point as soon as I started writing, the calculator moves away. So I'm going to write this point down. They meet at 0.5 or 1/2, comma, -7. So 0.5, 7. That is my point. So 0.5 on the x axis and 7 on, or that should be a -7 on the y, and that's a 0.5, not a -5. Okay, there's my calculator again. And that looks reasonable. That looks like we're about halfway between 0 and 1 on the x and down 7 on the y. So our last step says the x coordinate of the point of intersection is the solution. And remember, we're looking for, when we're solving this equation, if we go back up here to our equation, we're looking for what is x equal to. And so once we get this point of equation, our solution is x equals 0.5 or 1/2. I think we wrote it as 1/2 when we did this problem earlier. And you could plug this in and check it just like we did before. But this gives you a way to solve an equation that's pretty complicated. There were quite a few steps that we did before on your calculator. Okay, one more thing in this video we want to go through, and that is finding zeros. This was at the very end of the last equation. We said the zeros of a function are the values of x that make it true, f of x equals 0, true. So we're going to use our graphing calculator to do this. So go back over to y equals. I'm going to clear out both of the equations that we put in before. Go back up to the first line and put in 5x plus 20. Okay, and then hit graph. So we've done step 1, and you can see we have a line here. Now we're going to do step 2, and what we're actually going to do here, this is really kind of like this first one. We found where these two lines cross. If you think about it, if we were to do the same thing, our second equation would be y equals 0. We'd say y equals 5x plus 20, and then we would do y equals 0. Y equals 0 is just the x-axis. This whole thing right here is y equals 0. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the calculator to find the x-intercept, which is the same thing as finding where it crosses the line y equals 0. But there's actually a function already built into the calculator, so we don't have to graph y equals 0 to do this. So here is where we find that function that we're looking for. It's again under this calc button. So I'm going to do second, calc, and that brings up that same menu we did before. Last time we did number 5. This time we're going to do number 2. You can either just type the number 2 or you can arrow down to it and press enter. Kind of like we did before, this is an iterative process. It doesn't just tell you what the 0 is. You need to first move the cursor, so that's that blinking light, and sometimes it takes a while to find it. If you're not sure where it is, look down here at these coordinates. See how it says y equals 24? That means it's way, way up there. So I need to move it down to the left. So I'm going to press, I'm not on the calculator. Oops. I'm going to arrow down. I think my calculator froze. There it is. Okay, I'm going to arrow until, there it is. See, it was way, way up there because it had y equals 24. So it was way up here. I kept arrowing down to the left to bring it down here. Now I can see it. And this says move the cursor to the left side of the x-intercept. Our x-intercept is right here. I'm still on the right side of it. I need to move it down here. So I'm going to use the arrows to get it down there. Then press enter. So that was step number 3. Now it says move the cursor to the right side of the x-intercept. and press enter. Now, why are we having to do this? This seems kind of silly. We only have one line on here. We only have one x-intercept. That's because sometimes you have a shape like a parabola or something that looks kind of like a W that crosses the x-intercept and x-axis in more than one place. So you are telling the calculator that this is the intercept that you want, the one that is in between these two places that we are entering. So we entered on the left side, now we're on the right side. We're going to hit enter again. And just like before, it is wanting you to guess what that is, but you can just skip that and hit enter again, and it will calculate that point. So the 0 of the function is the x-coordinate of the x-intercept. And if we look at our graph, the x-coordinate is -4, so our 0 is -4. And if you look back at what we did in the last video, you'll find that's the same answer that we found by doing it algebraically.